You can't just look at somebody and be like, I don't think you're anemic. You don't look anemic to me, so I don't think you are. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, thanks for taking the time to watch. I'm Jasmine and I'm a realistic portrait artist and amateur cat wrangler. And this is my second channel where we explore the rich culture of reality TV and I tell the occasional story time. With every story I tell, there is ridiculousness involved and this one is no different. I'm going to be discussing my lifelong struggle with a medical condition, so if that's not something that interests you, I still recommend watching because you may find the information that I'm about to go over is extremely important and may help someone that you know. I have a lot of before and after pictures because not only did I feel better with less pain, there was an outward change in my body appearance. Today I'm telling you the story of my endometriosis. If you've been following me on Instagram, you probably are aware that last year I did some research and made the decision to get a Mayan abdominal massage, which single-handedly changed my life. I'll go over that later in this video as well. It's making me very nervous. I don't usually talk about my medical conditions, but I feel like it's kind of important. First off, I do want to say that I have been to a couple of doctors. The first one that I told about this, she suggested that I do have this condition based on all of my symptoms, but because I couldn't have the surgery to confirm it, I have been operating for several years under that assumption. I have almost every single symptom of endometriosis. That is just pretty much how I center my diet around and all of that. Even if you're not a woman, you likely don't live under a rock and there's some woman in your life, and chances are there's a woman that struggles with this issue or something similar. So pay very close attention. I'm going to go into detail about my experience with endometriosis and dysmenorrhea. Dysmenorrhea is actually a secondary condition of endometriosis. It's a secondary condition of other sicknesses as well, but endometriosis would be a very common one. So this is how I fixed my period. You heard that right. I got my uncooperative uterus fixed. Well, for the most part. This is so weird because it's almost like telling my life story. This was such a huge part of my life and it got in the way of so many things. People don't realize how many things I was not able to do because my condition kept me from living a normal life and planning things. It got in the way of so many events. It's crazy. For example, it prevented me from pursuing higher education. Not only do I not have the attention span or money for school, even if I had the money and the attention span for higher education, I got sick every single month with no idea as to what was wrong with my body, so I would not have been able to keep up with classwork or getting to school on time or being able to get through a lecture because this was quite unpredictable. A lot of time was spent crying every time I had an episode every month. It was so miserable. They were truly awful and I've never felt closer to death. Let's start off with a rundown of what endometriosis is. It is an often painful condition where cells that are similar to the uterine tissue, they grow outside of the uterus. These cells follow a woman's hormone cycle, form lesions, and they can attach to pretty much any organ in the body, and they also follow your hormone cycle. The lesions can thicken, break down, and bleed as your hormones change each month. In different stages of endometriosis, these can also cause your organs to stick together. Some of the symptoms of this wonderful illness include pain, infertility, digestive problems, excessive bleeding, bloating, nausea, fatigue, and so much more. I learned that women with endometriosis also have higher cases of asthma and acid reflux. I have both of those things as well. Amazing, right? Am I grossing you out yet? Let's go back to the beginning, to 15-year-old me getting my period for the first time, conveniently at a time when so much else was going on in my life. I was helping my mom with her wedding. I made about 9 dozen gingerbread cookies and I decorated them for these little goodie boxes. At first, I was a little bit weirded out, but I didn't feel any cramps, so I didn't think anything of it. I only had a really horrible headache. That's what I remember the most. In fact, for the first 5 to 6 months, the only symptoms I noticed were heavy bleeding, fatigue, and I craved a lot of salt and sugar. So that was also a turning point where I was eating a lot more and I was gaining more weight. Well, that's part of the reason I was gaining weight. I craved sugar cookies. I don't know why. I'm not even a huge fan of sugar cookies, but they were there and I would eat 5 or 6 cookies, and I remember I ate sugary cereal for breakfast, but I just felt like I couldn't get enough sugar. It was a very weird thing. And then other times when I got older, I would crave cheesy popcorn and orange juice at the same time. Isn't that a weird combination of things? Later on, I would say after about 8 months, I noticed that I started to develop cold and flu symptoms right around that time of the month every month. I would start coughing, I'd get a sore throat, I would get body aches, and I just felt icky all over. Those symptoms would go away after a couple of days. Around that time, I did begin to get pain. It was really mild pain, and then as the months went on, the pain increased. Then that's when the episodes started. I'm still traumatized. What would happen on the first or the second day, I would start to get a little bit of pain, a dull aching pain, and then that pain would increase. Then there was nausea. Once the pain was high enough and unbearable enough, that's when the nausea came in. There was sweating, dizziness. I was laying on the bathroom floor because I was too weak to get up because my blood pressure would plummet. I'd often throw up and I'd have to lay on the floor in pain. Because I couldn't take anything for the pain, I knew I wouldn't be able to keep it down. So I just had to be on the bathroom floor, miserable. In my early 20s, I would start to get pain within the first 1 to 2 hours of it starting. I had to act accordingly. The episodes came much earlier. I would have to leave work if it started and be home within an hour of it starting so that I could take painkillers and acid reducers for my stomach. So the pain would get sharper, and then there was a dull pain on top of that. In addition to the dull pain, my entire body would hurt. I don't know if you've ever been sick, if you've ever had the flu, and you know when you get like a fever and then the next day your body is just like aching really badly. That was the kind of body ache that I had. I was in so much pain that I would be hunched over and it would be hard to walk.
What's wrong with you, Jasmine?
I can't walk. I was doing this earlier. I'd wake up on the first day of Aunt Flo and I would be hunched over in the morning. I'd walk out of my bedroom to the hall closet to get the pills that I needed for the pain. Could not stand up straight. My abdomen would hurt so badly in addition to that. That made standing even more complicated. Fast forward to 2016. My abdomen started to get slightly bigger even though I wasn't eating more than normal. I noticed that I had gained about 6 pounds in just a few months. I wasn't eating a lot more than usual. I was walking to work and most of the time I would walk home. So I worked 5 days a week at that time. When I walked, that was about 10 miles a week of walking to and from work. My pants were starting to fit tighter. The year after that, in 2017, I started to wear sweatpants to work because I couldn't button any of my jeans. I would have to leave the button open and then use my belt to hold up my pants. I could not fit into any of my Hot Topic pants. Most of my pants are from Hot Topic. I couldn't fit into any of those. It's very frustrating. That's a lot of money in pants. The one day in April of 2017, Aunt Flo started when I was at work and I was like, oh crap, now is not the time. I had to take off the rest of the day. I just felt like I had to get home as soon as possible. I could just feel an episode coming on. It's just that feeling in the pit of my stomach. And since I walked home, I made sure to get there as quickly as I could in one piece because I could feel my body starting to shut down. I didn't live too far from work at the time. It was very easy to get home quickly. I got home in less than 20 minutes. I was almost home and I start to get dizzy. How embarrassing. My walking slowed down. I could feel my vision getting darker. I just barely made it through the front door. My little brother was home at the time. He's 6 years younger than I am, so let's see, 2017, I was what, 24? So he was 18 at the time. I rushed to my room and I'm just crying from the pain starting because by that time it was almost unbearable already. From the start to the episode, less than an hour. I was lying on my bed. I called my brother and he came into my room and I said, can you please find my heating pad? He found it, so I used that, and then he went into the kitchen and made me a makeshift heating pad that was hotter with a hot towel, heated it up in the microwave. He put that in a plastic grocery bag and brought it to me, and that was better than the heating pad. It was hotter and more direct heat. I asked him to text my mom at the time because I couldn't remember where she put the Flexeril or the Vicodin. I felt like it was one of those times where I had to take that because it was so severe and I thought I was dying. If you aren't familiar with those, Vicodin was a prescription painkiller. It's not on the market anymore because it's very addictive. If you've ever seen the show House, that's what he takes for his leg pain. Flexeril is a prescription muscle relaxer. So if we didn't have Vicodin, I would take that and that would really calm me down and it would make me sleep and make the pain go away for a little bit. I felt like Vicodin worked a little bit better. It was stronger. That should give you an idea of the amount of pain that I was in. Flexeril row makes you sleep better than a baby. These were just leftover meds that I found in the hallway closet. I was very desperate. I was allowed to take it, so it's not like I was stealing from anybody. I was allowed to take it if I was in that much pain. Ibuprofen doesn't work, okay? There's a whole long story about that. That's probably what ruined my stomach in the first place. That's probably why I have acid reflux now, because over the years I took so much ibuprofen for headaches and for pain each month that it probably affected my stomach lining long term. Moving on to 2018, that was the first year that I decided that I would go to a doctor to see why I was suffering. The only thing that they prescribed me was birth control. And I told them how much pain I was in. The first lady that I went to, she wasn't actually a doctor. I couldn't even see the doctor. She was a nurse practitioner. I felt like she didn't take me seriously. The way that she was talking, I felt like she was kind of condescending to me. She only prescribed birth control, and then she said to try it out for a couple of months and to come see her after that, and to take more ibuprofen. I think she said I could take 600 to 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, and sometimes I was already taking that. And then I was telling her, you know, how much blood I'm losing every month and I'm getting lightheaded. And then she's like, well, based on that, I don't think you're anemic. How do you tell somebody is anemic by those couple of questions? You can't just look at somebody and be like, I don't think you're anemic. You don't look anemic to me, so I don't think you are. The other frustrating thing is that you could not get through to a doctor's office the same day for them to get you something for the pain anyways. So if you get a call back, it's several days later. I could have been dead by then. My whole experience with doctors has been atrocious. I've seen other women get treated better and have their pain taken seriously, and at the very least getting prescription painkillers for what they're experiencing, and I wasn't even offered that. I was only offered birth control and an exploratory surgery. In 2018, I really started to notice the growth of my abdomen more. I couldn't button my jeans at all. I was wearing them with a belt to hold them up still. I eventually moved to sweatpants, joggers. I wasn't really eating more food than usual. I would look in the mirror and my belly was taking on the appearance of a pregnant woman. I looked like I was 4 or 5 months along. Before periods, my abdomen would start to have this burning feeling. I'm just laying there in bed and my abdomen is like on fire and there's cramps in addition to that. The other symptom that I have is I have an extreme thirst right before the period starts, so I drink a ridiculous amount of water. I do retain water. I feel like I cannot get enough water. Let's move to 2019. That was a weird year for me. Same old monthly pain. I got a really unusual symptom. I was randomly crying. It's so weird. I wasn't even sad. I remember I was doing my makeup before I was about to leave the house, and then tears are just streaming down my face out of nowhere. It was so involuntary. Every period my belly started to grow more. I'd get super bloated, and there were times when my abdomen was protruding so much that the skin was hurting because it was stretched out so far. It would stay like that for 4 or 5 days, sometimes longer. I decided to go to a new gynecologist. She also decided to prescribe birth control, and I was on that for a few months. I did okay with that one, but I don't remember why I quit taking it. I forgot, there was some symptom that I was getting. I can't remember right now, but I quit taking it after about 3 or 4 months. Birth control did not do a lot. I mean, all it does is it lessens the pain somewhat because it changes your hormones, and that's if you get one that works. 2020, some other symptoms started happening in addition to the monthly pain. I was wheezing a lot more. I was having a hard time digesting food. My abdomen was huge all the time. My digestion was slow. I was just getting really frustrated. I would wake up with horrible allergy symptoms like an itchy throat, sneezing. I had this runny nose for several years and I could not figure out why my nose would not stop running. I had to take tissue everywhere. My mom suggested that I start making some changes to my diet. She would do research on foods that I could cut out. I would do research, and then I decided to really just look at my diet and change as much as I possibly could just to see if anything helped with my bloating and my allergy symptoms. I did put myself on a pretty strict diet. I did start feeling better. So I alleviated a lot of my symptoms just by changing the food that I ate and adding other things to my daily routine of eating. I started feeling a lot better. The wheezing was less. I did still have some acid reflux, which was pretty scary because at night I was suffocating because when I was laying down I would like cough up stomach acid. It was pretty gross and traumatizing because I thought I was dying again, and then I found out that acid reflux was a common symptom of endometriosis and that your digestion affects your hormones. I also learned that your liver metabolizes estrogen. Your liver cannot metabolize the estrogen properly and it recycles it back into your body. That made sense as to why I would start crying randomly. When I changed my diet, I noticed my mood changed and I quit crying randomly, at least at that time. It was a weird time for me. It was frustrating because I didn't know if I had fibroids or some kind of reproductive cancer. I didn't know if I had cysts or tumors, and I wasn't gaining weight anywhere else still for a little while. I did start eating second breakfast and I did actually gain a little bit of weight near the end of 2020, but after I changed my diet in 2021, well, I changed it more. I noticed I lost the weight again because I cut out a lot of junk food. I was hungry all the time. That's why I gained weight, because I was just eating a lot and my digestion was poor. I wasn't absorbing food properly. That affects your hunger. Second breakfast. I miss second breakfast. Anyways, back to 2021. I started documenting what my abdomen looked like each month. I wrote down in my calendar what day Aunt Flo started so I could count the days in between, and I noticed that I was getting my period too frequently. As I got older, I was getting sometimes 2 in a month. So I'd get one and then I get another one about 22 to 23 days later. So I was suffering more frequently than the average woman. I can get, 15 or 16 periods a year. That's a normal thing for myself. That reminds me of something. I remember I had a coworker and there was a conversation at work and he decided to take it upon himself and say that women get their periods on the first week every month. And I thought you guys might find that funny. I really found this natural healing book super useful. It helped me out a lot with everything that I was suffering from, because I could get relief for my symptoms with supplements and just changing my diet, making sure I get enough exercise, just making sure that I drink raspberry leaf tea. That was also something that I made pretty frequently. I'd make a huge pitcher of that, which is a pitcher is about 6 cups. So I drink that in 2 days. Raspberry tea, it did help a little bit. It helps tone the uterus and the pelvic floor and eases cramps. It's high in vitamin C. It did work marginally for myself. 2022, we have arrived at 2022. That was the year I started to lift weights, which was something that I did in high school for a semester in my freshman year. I wanted to get in shape for so long, but being fatigued all the time was really wearing me out. Every month I was fatigued. I didn't have energy or the mood to really do anything because endometriosis was just like really taking me down. Mentally, it was a struggle. I cried because I was frustrated, and then physically, I just felt like I was very weak. It's really important to get enough exercise when you have excess estrogen, because working out helps to lower your estrogen. And when you're lifting weight, putting on muscle, your body needs to have testosterone to build that muscle. I took hormone, herbs, and supplements. There was a long list of vitamins, cell salts, and I limited dairy as much as I possibly could. And then I use an EMS or TENS unit. It helped short term with the cramps. It has those 2 little sticky pads that you put on your skin and it sends electric currents. That actually did help me a little bit with the cramps. I've used heating pads, hot towels, I've massaged my uterus, which brings me to the method that I talked about at the beginning of this video. I've had an endoscopy to see why I was wheezing from my acid reflux. I had that last year in May. I've had 2 pelvic ultrasounds, so pay very close to what I'm going to tell you about these ultrasounds. In 2019, the first time I went to the new gynecologist, I had a pelvic ultrasound done. In 2022, so last year in May, I had a second pelvic ultrasound done. And she said, let's just do that before we decide if you want to go through with the surgery or not. I do not have $1,400 to pay up front for an exploratory surgery that will keep me out of work for at least 2 weeks. Now here's where things get interesting. I don't have the ultrasounds, but I have the reports from both years. The 2019 ultrasound that the gynecologist ordered, that came back normal. The 2022 results came back normal. I've seen women with this condition miss work to it being a chronic illness that's debilitating, and they've gotten something prescribed for their pain. So I feel like I wasn't taken seriously with the pain, and then when I got my ultrasound results, I don't think that that was taken seriously either. it just gets really discouraging because you get this feeling that you're not important in the eyes of medical professionals, or like they're rushing, or they're just trying to shove birth control in your face, and they do not want you to get your tubes tied or to get a hysterectomy. They are firmly against that. Even when you tell them that you don't want kids, like I did, I made it very clear that I don't ever want to have kids. I don't want to give birth. I'm going through all this unnecessary suffering. The day that I got my 2022 ultrasound back, I noticed in my online account that it also had the 2019 one. So I look at both of them and I compare them, and I'm like, oh, the 2019 one says that I have a retroverted uterus. The doctor didn't tell me that. I can't believe that I didn't notice that before. The doctor didn't say anything about it at all. I asked my mom what that is. She's like, it's basically a tilted uterus. Most doctors don't see it as a big deal, and they don't think that it affects you very much. They don't think that it causes you pain or discomfort, hence why both of these were seen as normal. There are several types of uterus positions. These are important if you suffer with pain. This is something that you might want to look into. You might want to research it and have an ultrasound done. The first one is a normal one, which faces forward at a slight tilt. So pretend this is your spine. So this is your uterus. A normal one kind of goes like this. It doesn't quite rest on your bladder. It just kind of goes like this at a slant. So it faces away from your spine. An anteverted uterus faces far forward, so far enough that it can rest on the bladder. So an anteverted uterus would be like this, almost completely straightforward. And then there's a retroflexed uterus, which has a more severe tilt towards the spine. So this is the spine, and a retroflexed one is more like this. And then a retroverted uterus is a uterus that faces backwards towards your spine. In some pictures, it looks like this towards the spine, or it looks like it's just resting along the spine or along the colon, actually in front of the spine. And when I had the Mayan abdominal massage done, the doula, she said mine kind of looks like this. It's more curved towards my spine, which is not a normal position. This is not normal. A tilted uterus can be the result of many conditions. You can be born with it, or you can have endometriosis, for example. That is something that moves the uterus forward. The lesions that grow, they can move around. Fibroids can move it. That's something that I probably had my entire life. And doctors like to only get you on the pill or some kind of hormone birth control as a band-aid instead of actually thinking about what the issue could be. So think about that. The smallest detail that doctors didn't really think was important was actually the most important thing for me to know to help myself and to fix my period. I took birth control last year in May, and it was one of the worst experiences out of the several pills that I had tried. In that month, I was trying a new pill to balance my hormones. This was before I got an abdominal massage. I'm gonna tell you guys how I learned about that because it's a funny story. I learned about it by accident. I was still trying to balance my hormones after I changed my diet because my estrogen seemed like it was still really high. I was still feeling like certain weird symptoms. The nausea would come on my period. It would be really strong nausea, which is a symptom of high estrogen. So the pill that I was on in May, it caused a 13-day long pill bleed. About 6 days in, I noticed that I was in a little bit of pain and I started to lose a lot of blood. I missed 2 whole days of work. I had to use my medical leave to take off of work. So that was 2 unpaid days of work. I was lightheaded. My belly was so stretched out that not only was the skin hurting, my abdomen felt heavier than it already did. It felt like I was carrying a really large weight around. My uterus was pushing on my bladder. I peed so many times. I was just really miserable. I was starting to feel lightheaded because I'm pretty sure I got anemic. I also had to take supplements to try and not be anemic and eat more food. It was just really difficult. I felt totally awful. Sent pictures of my abdomen to my mom and my little brother because he's interested in health stuff, and he was just shocked at how huge my abdomen was. So here is a picture of what I looked like when this started. And keep in mind, a pill bleed is not a period. When you're on birth control, you don't have a period, you have a pill bleed. Your body does not lay the egg, but you still have that. My mom was reading the ultrasound results on the little paper because it has all of the measurements on there, and she was really concerned with the part that said the uterine lining was almost 2 centimeters thick, and she was really mad at the doctor, and she's like, that's cancer range uterine thickness. Why didn't she check to see if you had cancer? What is she even doing there? Followed by some other choice this word. Just imagine somebody you know who's experienced in the medical field yelling in frustration because the medical field is not treating their loved one with better care. Then picture them pointing out everything wrong, like in a if I could do it myself, I would situation. Really though, how upset would you be if someone you knew was going through this? Or you probably know of someone who already is. Also in May of 2022, once I learned all of this about the uterus positioning, I decided to go to Google to familiarize my brain with naturopathic treatments. These are very expensive treatments that insurance does not cover. I had great insurance through my job. That was useless. I really needed to get my hormones under control. I had no idea that a tilted uterus could actually be fixed. It could be repositioned until I came across this naturopathic doctor. So I made an appointment on a Sunday to consult with her. It was a 30-minute session. She gave me a treatment plan on this brochure. The brochure had a ton of different treatments that she tries with her patient just to see what worked. I think she said it was 16 appointments over a few months. There were a ton of natural ways to combat common issues. She doesn't just treat hormone stuff, she treats all kinds of stuff, arthritis, anything inflammatory. She recommends like diet changes and all of this stuff, and I think that's great. But this was a 16-week plan, $6,000. Started at $6,000. I don't have $6,000. While I was reading the brochure in her office, I was talking to her and I was asking her questions because obviously, I mean, I can't afford that. Are you crazy? Being the nosy badger that I am, I said, I see it says Mayan Uterine Massage. What is that? Never in my almost 30 years of living had I heard of that, and it was just something odd to see. She explained to me that her clients have benefited from this and it helps with pain and fertility. I don't care about fertility, but you had me at pain. I have no doubts that this doctor could help people. She had great reviews online. I just did not have $6,000. I told her I would think about it, but let's be real, I took the brochure and I never saw her again. The only people that could afford that are the same ones that hire people like me to clean their houses. I decided that once again I was going to turn to the internet, good old Google, to see where in the world I could get this massage, but affordable, because maybe, just maybe, I could get a break from the suffering. You guys don't understand that I was at my wit's end. That's all I wanted, was to get relief. Imagine 14 years of suffering. If you go through that, I'm so sorry, but you're gonna want to get this done after I tell you what happened. I came across this birthing service on Google and it was local, which made me so happy I didn't have to drive to another city. Of course, I was skeptical about seeing a doula, but I was at a point where I just wanted to cut my uterus out. Gynecologists do not make money off of you unless you're having a baby or surgery. I know what you're thinking, Jasmine, why on earth are you seeing someone that helps women birth children when you don't even want kids? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? I emailed this doula. She helps women give birth in their homes in many scenarios where there's no medical intervention, such as getting induced or getting a lot of unnecessary medication, not getting, you know, unnecessary C-sections, because a lot of C-sections are unnecessary. I learned that from her. That's nuts. A lot of procedures in medicine are not necessary, which is kind of ironic, but they only make money off of you if they do a surgery or prescribe you something very expensive. I sent her pictures of my belly, the ones I just showed you here on the screen, and we set up an appointment for a Mayan abdominal massage. If there's one thing that I learned about birth keepers and midwives, it's that they do the absolute most to make sure that a woman needs the absolute least conventional medical care during the whole birthing process. Because think about it, women gave birth for thousands of years and were not in hospitals. Only in the last probably 100 years, if that, have women had to give birth in hospitals. You just wonder what they did all of that time. Well, they did things a lot differently. So fun fact, when I was born, I was actually blue in the face because my umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. They got me breathing again. She comes to my house and she explains to me that the uterus can be repositioned, and I was shook. And that took 2 sessions for me. She felt a lot of knots in my abdomen and my stomach was very tight. Eventually I had gotten to a point at that time where I couldn't eat a lot of food. I thought it was because of my acid reflux, and I started to severely limit my food. I'd get full really quickly and then I would start wheezing if I ate too much food, so I could only eat about like a handful of food at a time. She could tell by my stomach that I have anxiety just by feeling it. I was like, yeah, I work in customer service, so I also have anxiety outside of that. And when you have anxiety, it affects you physically, it's not just a mental thing. This massage brings your internal organs to the center of your body where they are supposed to be. I had congestion around my lung because I have asthma and there were some things that were bothering it. My uterus uterus was in the wrong place, as we know. My ovaries were in the wrong place, and my intestines were in the wrong place from coughing and from being overweight. Remember, I told you guys that I was overweight some years prior to that. Well, most of the weight that I carried was in my top half. A lot of it was around my belly area. That actually shifts some of your organs around, like your intestines, when you're really overweight. So she was telling me that those are some of the reasons why some of my organs were out of place. Just think about that. People are just walking around and their intestines are not where they're supposed to be. That's weird. I had pneumonia and bronchitis over the years. I had done my fair share of coughing. Coughing can really mess you up internally, even after you've gotten better. So after the first session, my abdomen was very sore. I had a little bit of internal bruising, but my abdomen felt a lot squishier, which it's supposed to. She worked out a lot of knots, kind of like how a therapist works out knots in your back. Well, your front can also have knots. And my abdomen didn't feel as heavy, but you need to understand my pain tolerance at this point. This pain was really not much of anything compared to what I had to endure from cramps. Also in June, I had an appointment set up earlier in May because I was trying to see another gynecologist in June, but in between then I had actually gotten the massage before I went to the new gynecologist. She prescribed me another birth control. I did not take it because I wanted to wait for my period to come after the massage to see if this is what really works. I didn't want to take anything because I needed to know if this is something that was really going to benefit me. So the doula, she taught me a couple of massages that I can do when I feel cramping, and I couldn't do a lot of bending or weightlifting for a couple of days. And behold, after the first session, I got my period 5 to 6 days later, if I remember correctly. I had a small amount of cramping, maybe like a 4 out of 10 on the pain scale for about an hour. An hour, that's it. I don't even think it was an hour long. I took magnesium, which I take every day anyways. The pain went away. I didn't have dizziness. I didn't throw up. I was just a little bit tired. That's it. I could not remember the last time that I had a period that had no pain without the use of medication. So over the next several weeks, my digestion improved a lot. I wasn't bloated from eating food. Things were passing through and my body was absorbing food the way it was supposed to. I also didn't have to pee all the time. That was a weird symptom I had for several years. I would pee like 11 times a day. I counted. Like a pregnant woman has to go all the time. That's what I had. But after all of this, I didn't have to pee all the time because my uterus wasn't being weird. I didn't have nausea on my period, so I could eat food. That was not something that I was used to. You have to remember that I had to adjust my life to accommodate the illness for so long. I was just shocked at how much I was able to do after just the first massage session. It's so interesting. I learned a lot from her, and she's provided me so much on dealing with my periods even months later. It was wild, you guys. As the months went on, there was little to no pain. I didn't have to take pain relievers. She did tell me that my uterine lining will eventually like shed, so I was shook. It was hard to believe that I had 2 massages. It was like $120 total of massages that improved my life so drastically. By the time I went to Comic-Con last year, about 3 weeks or so before I went to Comic-Con, I got another massage done. It was a stressful couple of months and I wanted to just get this done in case Aunt Flo decided to make an appearance, which she did. I have a separate video on Comic-Con. I'll show you guys all of the stuff that happened and the prep work that I did. In this picture at Comic-Con, I was on my period, but you can't tell. I'm conscious. I'm not in any pain. All I was a little bit tired, but that was because I was just doing so much that week. Because of her, I was able to even go to Comic-Con and plan for it in the first place. If I would have never met her, I would not have gone to Comic-Con. I wouldn't have been able to fit into the costumes. There was a lot I wouldn't have been able to do. I wouldn't have tolerated just being out in public like that while my period was happening, because it would be very overwhelming. I would get really hot and sweaty, and none of that happened. I do want to go again this year. There was only one event in September. It was probably from stress or I was passing clots, but there was this one day I actually got my period twice in September. I got it about 3 weeks later. I wasn't really in any pain. I did start getting lightheaded though, and I was really sweaty and it was really bad for a couple of hours, and then my body kind of like snapped out of it, I guess. My blood pressure finally got back up. I had to eat some salty crackers to try to get my blood pressure up. That was while I was cleaning a house, but it went away. I talked to the doula later in the day and she's like, it could be stress. You could have been passing some clots. It could be a lot of things, but I'm glad you're doing better now. I'm like, thanks. I thought I was dying, but thank you. I wasn't in a lot of pain. I just felt really, really weird. I've been managing that. My blood sugar, I check that as well. But it's been pretty wild, you guys. Men and women can get this type of massage. It has benefits to digestion. It also has benefits with circulation. So not just women can get this. It has a ridiculous amount of benefits. Well, that's pretty much it. I know this was a very long video. I have been wanting to do this for a while, but then I was on the fence about, do people want to know this? It's like a secret that I need to tell everyone. It's very hard to explain, but I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch my videos. I do story times, TV commentary, and we just kind of hang out here. It's too quiet, so I'm gonna go check on the dogs and the cats to make sure they have not maimed each other. Please don't forget to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, and leave a comment below. I look forward to hearing from you guys. I try to make 2 videos a month on this channel and 2 on my main channel. It's a little bit to keep up with, but I am pre-recording a lot of videos, so it's just gonna take me some time. But thanks so much for spending some time with me, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.